Hello, I'm Doug, and this is the Taste and Sensibility channel. And today we're at episode number 9 of Popcorn, where we're looking at sweeter seasonings, sweeter flavorings, and we have a kettle corn, which I popped a few minutes ago, and then we have a cinnamon sugar popcorn that I did yesterday. It's not that fresh. And then we'll move on to more complicated things. These are really simple, easy to do. Anyone can do these. And then the caramel corn gets more into candy making. And we'll compare all these to commercial brands, ventures, options also. But before we dive in, let me get you to like the video down below, leave questions and comments, share this with friends, subscribe to the channel, and click on that bell so you'll get notified when the new videos come out. Now, this kettle corn, both of these are basically the Jolly Time Select White, which pops up really big and fluffy and doesn't have much of a corny flavor. It is a blank slate that you get to paint on for the first time. So over here, this was like 90 grams of the Jolly Time popcorn in 3 tablespoons of sunflower oil, which is different than our usual tasting oil. And then I threw in 2 tablespoons of white sugar, granulated sugar. As it was heating up, the test kernels popped. I threw in the sugar, stirred it around a little bit, and then I threw in the corn. And then in the overhead camera, you can see some of these are more browned than other things. So I had a lower heat setting. After the oil was hot and smoking, I turned it down from a 4 on my range setting, a certain burner, and turn it down to a 3. So it took longer to pop. I didn't want to scorch the sugar. I didn't want to burn it, turn it black. But it did turn much of it brown, so you can see that in the overhead camera. So this, and then when it came out of the popper, it was nice and big and fluffy, but it kind of stuck together. I wanted it to be one lump, and I had to really knock it around, break it up, knock it into individual pieces before I threw on the salt and poured it into this bowl. So this is pretty new stuff, and I did break it up quite a bit. So let's see how it does as kettle corn. Definitely cooked brown stuff and sweet. There's a sweetness to it. There's an extra crunch. There's a sugary crunch from the sugar being on the outside of all this. It's just a very light shell. It's microscopic, but man, it is crunchy and sweet. I'm not sure the browns parts taste any different, more cooked, more browned than the white parts. I also threw in a 1/4 teaspoon of salt before. Well, as I was breaking up, before I broke it up, I was shaking the heck out of it in a paper bag. And I thought, there's no way this salt is not going to stick. So there's no salt left over at the bottom of the bag. So I'm not sure I get a corniness, but I certainly get a sweetness and a crispy texture and a crunch. And I attribute all that to the sugar. So this is an easy way to make a sweeter popcorn that is just as good as a munchie, some snack, some salty thing that you want to munch on while you're watching something. Excellent. So it's a very simple recipe, and very easy to do, and anyone with a stovetop popper can do something like this. And my big caveat when I make something like this is to wash it out right away. I don't always wash out the popper if I'm just doing a popcorn with oil, but if I'm doing it with sugar, boom, water goes in right away to dissolve all that sugar and get rid of it, so it's not there for the next time. So let me clean up a little bit. I'm going to compare this to the commercial one. Popcorn Indiana sweet and salty kettle corn, which I've never tasted before. But oh, it feels stiff also and crunchy, like it might have sugar all over the outside. And I chose this because of the ingredients. Popcorn, cane sugar, vegetable oil, sea salt. Just 4 things like I did. So it should be very similar. So this is good. It's about the same sweetness as mine is. And this is an 8-ounce bag for about $3. And I think the 90 grams of popcorn that I threw into this cost something like 60 cents. Sugar, 2 tablespoons of sugar, doesn't cost very much. So the results are very comparable. I would probably say that my preparation is a little more crafty, homemade, authentic. So this probably ends up costing 3-4 times as much as homemade popcorn with the sugar that you add yourself. So let me go back, see if these brown things actually add anything. Yeah, I think there was a darker note. It's a little bit darker in flavor. And it's just a hint of a caramel note. Sugar's been caramelized. This is good. This is much, much cheaper. And you get to control all the ingredients. So let's clean up and move over to the cinnamon sugar preparation. So this is one I found online that simply takes about the amount of popcorn that I usually cook and adds 2 tablespoons of sugar and a teaspoon of ground cinnamon. And I use the turbinado sugar that's not quite refined all the way to white and has really big granules. But I threw it into a spice grinder with that cinnamon and just pulverized it to bits. So it's a powder that I knew pretty much that none of it would fall off the popcorn. And this, I forgot to pop it in 3 tablespoons of oil instead of 2. So it only had 2 tablespoons of oil, but everything stuck. All the flavors in there. All the sugar. There's a sweetness to it. There's an interesting cinnamon note. And it's not dominating everything. You can still have the popcorn coming through. You can have grainy notes coming through. It's kind of like a lightly cinnamon dusted donut or something where you get all the dough flavors, but you still get a little sweetness. You still get a little cinnamon. So this is real interesting to me, how cinnamon sugar doesn't really take over the place. It's a good extra note and not the main note. Yes. It's just a touch to the 90 grams of popcorn. It's wonderful. So it's just a recipe I found online. And cinnamon sugar is one of the easier things you can do to popcorn. So if you're looking for something sweet to munch on, this is just excellent. It's sweet on the popcorn and the cinnamon note pops out, but neither one of those things dominates. You can still get the popcorn and graininess through all of it. It's white popcorn, which doesn't have a lot of corniness. So it's a big plus. It's a big surprise that it's so good and has so many. It's complex for how simple it is. So, big fan. I'll put the recipes in the description below. But both of these are just wonderful. But before I eat it all, let's move on to the different caramel corns, however you say that thing. Okay, we're back for the second round of the sweet seasonings, and this is caramel corn, or carrot. Everyone says caramel corn, don't they? A lot of people want to say caramel, but it doesn't go with corn, I don't think, sonically. So I've got two different recipes here that I made myself. So I broke out my candy making skills and made one recipe that actually came with the Amish Country popcorn sampler pack. Simple 4-ingredient caramel recipe that's based on brown sugar and corn syrup, butter, and water. And you cook it to a certain temperature, and then it becomes hard candy when it cools, and that's what's on here. So, totally brown sugar, well, corn syrup and brown sugar based. And then the other one over here I found on the internet. It looked like a pretty standard caramel corn thing. It has pecans in it, so you toast pecans and put that with your popcorn before you drizzle over your candy mixture. So these took a little while to do and research. I made this one twice. This is the first time I made it. It's my first candy making since I was a kid with my mom. Then I made this one, and it's really good. And by the way, I ate all this. And then based on that first run through with this one, I made it again with more butter. I added 50% more butter than I had before. I thought it was too brown sugar heavy, too molassesy. And just adding that little extra butter made it way more caramely. Seemed like more of a standard run-of-the-mill caramel to put on popcorn, and the brown sugar notes were tamed down a little bit. So I like both of these, so they're really good. So I've got a little video clip of me making the caramel coating, and drizzling that over the popcorn. This is a recipe that came with the Amish Country popcorn sampler pack. And I did it once, and it's all brown sugar and corn syrup, very brown sugar heavy. And I tried it once and decided I'm going to use more butter. So that's what I'm doing now, is throwing in the butter first. Done this once, I can do it faster. I tried the other caramel recipe and I like it better, but this is different. So people will have preferences. So there's the butter that's called for. This is almost room temperature. I should have kept it cold for easier handling, but I'm adding 50% more than they require. And now I'm putting in 1/3 cup of corn syrup. There is my 1/4 cup water through the residue of the corn syrup, and I'd say I got it all. So that's that part. I'm going to put the heat at a medium and dump in 2 cups of brown sugar. And this is a dark brown sugar, and it gives you all sorts of dark, molassesy brown sugar notes in the resulting caramel. So we will get that water and corn syrup heated up. So once it gets a little heated and flowing, then you just kind of stir continuously. And what we're doing is driving out all the water, or a lot of the water, and trying to get the temperature up to 300 degrees F or so. 290, 295 would be fine. It coasts a little bit. It takes a long time at the beginning. It goes at a slow pace at the beginning, but at the end the temperature rises more quickly because the water is mostly gone. So I think you can see the lumpy butter and brown sugar still hasn't dissolved, but that will change. So this is a medium brown liquid with still has some sugar granules undissolved. That took 31 minutes for our stove work. So I'm going to take it over to the popcorn and get the other camera going. I'm going to get the caramel cam going. Okay, clear the way for the caramel cam. Caramel cam coming up. Oh wow. Some's liquid and some's not. And then the real part, hard part will be letting it cool completely. This turns into a hard candy. But it's gotta be cool. So yeah, I used a lot of it. Okay, there we go. It's just a waiting game now. And then, and both of these candy coatings went over Jolly Time Yellow. No, Jolly Time Select Yellow. So the big, puffy one with the more corn flavor was the base for this. And once you get all this sugar on it, you can't tell that much about the popcorn. I don't eat sugar a lot. I don't put sugar on breakfast cereals. I don't eat breakfast cereals that much. I don't put sugar in tea. I drink unsweet tea. I don't add sugar to things. I'm not looking for sweet. I'm not looking for the sweetest version of anything. But this is one of my weaknesses. I'll put both of the recipes down in the description. So I almost didn't want to do this because I thought it was a big stretch getting people just to try stovetop popcorn and cook it themselves. And now it's suggesting people get into candy making and putting that on their stovetop popcorn. So let's take a look. Okay, so here's a couple of pieces. Oh, let's just do a smell, I guess. Smells like popcorn, and I don't smell the candy much. There's not really any aroma coming from the caramel that was put on top. Very sweet, kind of corny. You can pick out, you can tell it's popcorn. It's a little corny, and there's just a lot of sweetness. So almost all the sugar in this preparation is brown sugar, and then they also add soda, meaning baking soda, which I did the first time, but I didn't do it the second time. So that's my modification. And then I upped the butter 50%. So I'll mark all that in the description below. But this is a really good effect. The modified recipe is more mainstream, tones down the brown sugar notes. And I'd say this is a rival to many commercial caramel corn recipes or things that you can buy in boxes or bags. And much cheaper ingredients. So the brown sugar and molasses notes are there, but I don't know if it's 20% or 50% or 70% of the sugar in here. It's just sweet is the main thing. And the extra butter just makes it more buttery, caramel, classic caramel type notes. So you can tell butter and burn things are a component. So this is pretty good. I definitely recommend this recipe. Now I'm going to go over to this other recipe that uses some toasted pecans. Mainstream type caramel recipe with more butter and less brown sugar. No brown sugar, just white sugar and corn syrup. More buttery, caramely type notes are apparent immediately. It doesn't smell like much, but it's a very tasty caramel corn. And when you get to the pecans, that's a nice surprise also. They're toasted, light, very crunchy, and some of them have some caramel on them. So I much prefer this recipe. More mainstream, more buttery, more caramely, and then the pecans are great. So I don't eat sugar much, but when I do, it's something like this. Splendid. Buttery flavors, buttery mouthfeel. And the caramel also. Too big of a blob there. So takes a little practice to make the candy itself, and then it takes a little practice to spread it all over the popcorn. I'm feeling guilty now about making my mom make caramel corn or popcorn balls out of all this stuff that cools off and solidifies so fast. It's trouble. But this flavor right here is bringing back some memories. And now I'm going to try a couple of the commercial ones just as a direct comparison while I've got all the tasting apparatus here. So, what I grew up with is Cracker Jacks. 31 January 2023. So, you can't complain. Okay, here goes Cracker Jacks. Okay, peanuts are crunchy. So you get a sweetness, and the peanuts are interesting. They have a special crunch and flavor with the caramel on them. Almost a burnt peanut note. Okay, well that was disappointing. So I didn't do my quality control on it. First box was okay. Now I'm doing Crunch and Munch caramel popcorn with peanuts. Do you see peanuts? There's one. There's two. Well, that's rare. So this is a nice light yellow color on the caramel that's coated the pieces very well. These are nice big round balls. And very yellow. So, oh yeah. It's a nice buttery butterscotch caramel type note on the nose. No, I don't see anything that would just make it more fragrant. Peanuts, canola oil, butter. Yeah, it's mostly sweet. It's sweet, but it's not a special caramel type flavor. You would munch on it. I don't taste a lot of salt either. And not any corniness. So all the things I'm looking for are not here in Crunch and Munch. So any of the homemade caramels would be better. And you could adjust the salt so it seems like a popcorn with some salt on it. So this one was a fail because of freshness and light on the ingredients. And I'd say this one's a fail because of the recipe isn't all that buttery and caramely. It's just a very light sugar coating without a lot of depth or richness. Both of these flavor mixtures are deep and rich and substantial. So I'm going back over here. Get rid of that. So that'll wrap up our sweet seasonings episode. And so we've got the easier version of just kettle corn, or the cinnamon sugar version, or you could go to a little more effort and get something that's really special with any kind of nuts you want in it, any kind of sugar mixture you want in it. and any level of butter you desire. So I would say go ahead and do that caramel corn experiment. It's delicious and very worthwhile. So again, please like, comment, share, subscribe, and click that bell to get notified. And we have another 4 or 5 episodes to do on popcorns before we're done. So watch out for those, and cheers. Pop till you drop.